virtual green room right now, DJ Cotten. He is the author of a book called The Life and Times of Sergeant Joseph Tom Biway. And it's interesting when you tackle a subject, when it's one person and then you go through a span of a lifetime. And what makes that so interesting is taking one life and then, like I said, watching where it goes. And certainly this is that kind of a book. So, DJ, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you.
So tell us, who is Tom Biway?
Oh, he's an imaginary Marine. It's a character I more or less made up. And
Right.
It seems to, yes.
And so tell us about that. That's what I mean. You take a life and then you expand on it because you're focusing on the Marine. So tell us about him.
Yeah, it's about narcissism. Yeah, he grew up, in New York, upstate New York. So, and he had a normal childhood, but he started getting in trouble at a young age. Some things that influenced his life, like his father never got into the Army during World War I because he had asthma. And the young Marine never believed him, for one thing. And he went to a Catholic school. They fell in love, when he was 10 years old, they fell in love with another 10-year-old girl. He was trying to make love to her, and the nun came in the room and slapped him. And that turned him against the Catholic school. So he became rebellious increasingly. And finally, he was expelled when he was 12 from this Catholic school and was enrolled in a public school. And he fell in with one guy named Buddy Andrushak. And they became delinquents eventually.
So let me jump in here. So Tom is a delinquent kid. Then he grows up to become this Marine, and then he befriends, because you and I had a great conversation off the air, a Chicago cop. And what happens to the two of them?
Oh, he doesn't befriend the Chicago cop. That comes later. Anyway, he befriends this Buddy Andrushak, and they became juvenile delinquents. Well, anyway, this Buddy Andrushak eventually rapes a 9-year-old girl, and he gets sent to reform school. Meanwhile, this Thomas Biway, he finds his girlfriend, the last girlfriend, commits suicide. Then he ends up raping his own sister, Susan. And his father calls the police, and he's sent to reform. He's sent to court, and the judge gives him a three-way choice: go to reform school, join the Army, or join the Navy. And Biway opted for the Navy. He was 16 at the time, but the Navy had no vacancy, so he joined the Marines instead. And when he was in the Marines, he thrived and became devoted to the Marine Corps. For the first time, he had a purpose. And he fell in with this first sergeant, Fred Hobbs, and they started going around, nice, honky talking. And he fell, and they go to prostitutes, and he begins to, consort with Hispanic prostitutes until he was 19. And he was sent to the Philippines, for a year, and he becomes a corporal, and he returns to the United States. And in 1941, at the age of 22, he becomes a sergeant, at the tender age of 22. And he becomes a drill sergeant during World War II. And he doesn't go to the war himself, but he trains other young men to become Marines. And he finds marries them. Well, find one of his recruits, Lenny Ream. They became very good friends. And Lenny was killed in Okinawa. But Biway marries his wife. Her name is Aggie. And they had 2 children. They had a daughter and a son. But anyway, he finally gets his way in 1950. He goes to Korea because first time he saw action in the war, because he wanted to go into World War II, but he never did. But anyway, he went into action in Korea, and he fought, and he killed about 21 men to his credit. And finally returns home, but there's a tragedy because his son Lenny had already died from infantile paralysis. That was a long disappointment. Later on, they had another son, Paul. He died 2 days later after he was born. So,
wow.
Yeah, I know. Him and Aggie became apart. And he started staying more and more on the Marine base. When we did get off, he was sort of a Hispanic prostitute where he stayed with the Marines. And she met another man named Bill Decker. And he was a businessman. And he had a place in Marysville. And finally, Aggie and him became close friends. They became partners in business. And they decided to get married. And she asked Biway for a divorce, and he agreed because he knew she deserved better than what he was giving her. So anyway, so Aggie took her daughter and married Bill Decker, and they moved to Marysville because it was cool up there and it was away from the hustle and bustle of Southern California. So anyway, meanwhile, Biway goes to Japan. He transfers to Japan. He's on a base there. And he has one private court martial because remember Miller?
Yeah.
Because he had 4 children. Anyway, he's at Christmas time, and they were sitting at a table, and this Marine he's bragging about his son. He's 7 months old. He had 4 children, and Biway listened to him, and he began to cry. He lost his own 2 sons. So he decided to get vengeance, so he decided to court-martial Herman Mettler because he was drinking, and he succeeds finally. And the men on the base hated him so much, he decided to get transferred back to Southern California at Pendleton in Southern California.
I got it. Let's fast forward because we don't have a lot of time left in the interview, and I want people to hear about you. Wow, this story! You're such a nice guy, and you take us through an emotional roller coaster. All the horrible things that he does. Is there any redeeming qualities to this guy?
Well, he does. He falls in love with a girl named Carla Meyer, but she despises him. Well, she's from Austria, and is a niece of an Austrian diplomat, and he found out she despised him. He tried to make he was in love with her, but anyway, that's that. So meanwhile in Chicago, there's this young policeman, Odell Williams. He meets this vicious attack. Well, first of all, 1955, this young Mexican girl was attacked by this man with a knife, with a razor blade. Her face was cut really badly, and they finally caught the man through his efforts. He's taken the trial, but then he got off. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, crazy. So what do you hope ultimately, as we wrap this up, that people take away from reading your book, DJ?
Well, anyways, he becomes this Odell Williams, he becomes increasingly disillusioned with the system, justice system, Chicago police force, because worse than the criminals got away one way or another with their crimes. And he finally goes over the line, and he's forced to join the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And he does, avoid prosecution. And he does, and he's put under the command of Biway. And they go to Vietnam eventually. And he sees Biway, over there. He's there. Many man, he raped a nun, and he beat upon a priest. And he was taken Vietnamese, either Viet Cong or not. And he'd tie him up, instead of bringing him back to base and the prisoners, he'd turn him loose, and he'd go after him, the man, just for self-amusement. Well, finally,
wow.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know. You can't tell. You're telling us the whole story, so don't give that away because you want people to buy your book. So we're not going to tell any more about the life and times of Sergeant Joseph Thomas Tom Biway. Again, just really quickly, what do you hope people take away from reading this story? Well,
psychologically, the difference between somebody's overly conscientious and somebody's totally narcissistic or without scruples. It's about scruples. The Marine had no scruples. And the policeman did have too many scruples, so there's a difference between them. And they became to loathe one another. And finally, this Biway, he murders this Williams, the Private Williams.
Yeah.
He turned the Viet Cong prisoners loose. And Biway is actually a court-martial. And he's actually given a 10-year sentence in Leavenworth. After 10 years, he goes back to his wife and her husband and his daughter. and lives in California for the rest of his life after doing 10 years.
Wow. Yeah. What a crazy tale. DJ Cotten, we're out of time. Thank you so much for taking us through this crazy tunnel of a life that this character you created had. Like I said, this is a life, and you fleshed it out fully for us. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.